Hi, it's Dan from Tornado Talk. The way we keep this show free for everyone is with your support. And with the holidays around the corner, you might be searching for a perfect gift. We have a special offer right now. Order an Eton Zone Guard Plus AM/FM Weather Alert radio and 2 Tornado Talk koozies for just $25. We'll deliver it to your doorstep absolutely free. Just click on the weather radio icon on our website, tornadotalk.com. That's tornadotalk.com. The only way we can continue to make this show available free is with your help, and we thank you in advance.
This is Tornado Talk, a podcast about one of nature's most fascinating phenomenon. Share your tornado story with us by email, Jen and Dan at tornadotalk.com.
That's Jen and Dan at tornadotalk.com.
Now, meteorologists Jennifer Naramore and Dan Holliday. Tornado Talk is on.
The second largest tornado outbreak on record in the month of November.
It was a day, I believe, in the morning in which we were upgraded to a high risk from the Storm Prediction Center.
At least 76 tornadoes tear through 17 states. 36 people are killed, with 17 dead in Tennessee alone.
There was a couple in the upper portion of their home, and as this tornado approached, the husband attempted to cover his wife, who was wheelchair bound. As he was doing this, the home was hit, and he was killed by flying debris.
Between Saturday afternoon, November 9th, and Monday, November 11th, 2002, widespread severe storms impacted thousands of residents and changed communities forever.
And it went across several homes, and several homes over there were pretty much essentially demolished down to the foundation.
This is Tornado Talk, Weekend of Warnings, a historical recap of a massive severe storm event from Veterans Day weekend 2002.
In November, we think of cooler weather, Thanksgiving, and the start of the holiday season. It's not the time of year we worry about tornadoes. Forecasters refer to this as the second severe weather season. Michael Lewis is the warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service in northern Indiana.
There are truly two periods of time in our seasons that we have severe weather. We have a peak during the spring. We have a secondary peak that occurs in that November-December time frame, and this is indeed what happened in 2002. As we really maximized that peak. Had been a relatively mild fall, and actually was a quite warm November. The cold air just really wasn't making its way out of Canada or even across the poles, and we ended up with an open Gulf moisture, a lot of moisture and warmth streaming up across the southern United States, the Gulf Coast, and up into the Great Lakes region.
On the evening of Saturday, November 9th, severe thunderstorms were exploding over eastern Arkansas. This would be the beginning of 4 outbreaks. Storms that formed in response to an upper-level disturbance moved through western and central Tennessee.
A tornado producing F2 damage roared through Carroll County, just northwest of Cedar Grove, Tennessee. 2 people died. Nighttime
tornadoes can be deadly because those in their path are often asleep. When a tornado of F1 strength moved through Montgomery County, Tennessee, after 1 a.m. Sunday, November 10th, it would claim the lives of Dennis and Karen Tooby when their mobile home was blown off of its foundation.
Dennis was an Australian national and a welder. Karen taught first grade at Hazelwood Elementary School in Clarksville. In all, 60 homes and a building were damaged. But this was only the beginning.
On November 10th, 2002, a second upper-level storm system would combine with ingredients to produce some of the most destructive severe weather ever in the month of November. Michael Lewis at the National Weather Service in northern Indiana describes the atmospheric setup.
Thunderstorms developed down across the southern plains early on the 10th, and then that was kind of the first shot over the bow, as it were, that we started to see the development with this as a cold front came into that deep, rich moisture. We had a very intense area of low pressure moving out of across the Canadian plains and northern plain states and deepening across the Great Lakes. And it drew that cold front into the deep, moist air that was already in place across much of the eastern United States. And that really set the stage. At the time, the Storm Prediction Center had actually a convective outlook that was in the high risk across much of Tennessee into the southeastern states, extended up into Kentucky. The moderate was down into southern Ohio, but the slight risk extended from all the way down from Louisiana up into the Great Lakes. And so it was just a real potent situation. And then everything just lined up perfectly to create that environment conducive to the thunderstorm, rapid thunderstorm development, but more importantly, the supercell thunderstorm development, those rapidly rotating and large-lived supercell thunderstorms. Along with that, we had the line of thunderstorms that formed with this as well. So it was just almost the perfect combination, and certainly unexpected in some respects when you think about it from the public perspective. November, who would have thought that in early to mid-November there would have been tornadic thunderstorms?
Twisters began touching down at 2:30 on the afternoon of November 10th in Hartford City, Indiana, damaging a grocery store. It was rated an F1. Less than a half hour later, a tornado caused F3 damage near the town of Bern. There was minimal F0 damage near Petroleum, Indiana. That same afternoon, a supercell thunderstorm produced the first killer tornado of the day near the Ohio-Indiana border in Van Wert County, Ohio.
Post 20, 926 to 20. 926. Advise Finley, our desk is signal 1. We have a large tornado on the ground, probably a quarter mile in diameter. It is going through the town of Van Wert at this time.
Rick McCoy has been the director of the Van Wert County Emergency Management for more than 26 years. Prior to that, he was a deputy sheriff and studied meteorology. Because of his interest in weather, he and his team had their eye on what was about to happen well ahead of time.
We'd actually been watching the Storm Prediction Center outlook for several days that we would see a storm outbreak. But that particular Sunday morning, we were still thinking maybe thunderstorms up here in northwestern Ohio, and thinking more of maybe a wind event. Really weren't thinking tornadoes, but you could tell that particular morning that there was just that eerie feel in the air that something was going to happen. Very warm day, very windy day, and originally when the storm started to initiate over in Indiana that we were watching, we had went under a thunderstorm watch. A tornado watch was actually over central Indiana. So still at that point thinking, maybe this is just going to be a thunderstorm event for us. And so I was in here that afternoon. We started to see the storms intensify. We were watching a supercell that was coming our way. We started getting reports out of Indiana of tornado over several counties bouncing up and down that was still moving our way, and so at that point I activated our spotter network. The tornado was on the ground in Adams County, which is just southwest of us. Our spotters in the southwestern part of our county could actually see the tornado coming, and fortunately for the village right down in the southwestern part of the county, the tornado lifted there and went right over the village. And so at that point I was pretty much thinking, maybe with Indiana and Ohio tornadoes, we'll see them touch down, but they usually won't be on the ground very long, and they'll go back up, and pretty much the storm will start to dissipate. And once I give that report to the Weather Service that the tornado had lifted as it entered my county, they advised that they were still very concerned because radar was showing that supercell was intensifying, that they expected we might see a tornado come back down. So as it was approaching Van Wert and spotters were giving me play-by-play action, I was putting out information to the public of where the tornado was. And at that time, we weren't using Facebook. We didn't have a text alert system. We completely relied on sirens and people with scanners listening to statements that I was putting out. And also, I have weather monitors in many of the factories within the county, the school buildings, our government facilities. So I was putting out a lot of statements of where the tornado was at as it moved through. And as it was approaching Van Wert, it became an F4 tornado. And we've seen it make a slight left turn, which helped us a bit because it didn't come directly over the center of the city. It actually hit the west side of the town, and that's where our movie theater was. We have had a 5 theater complex there, and of interest, and I knew this was going on and it was heading their direction, was Santa Claus 2 had just come out that weekend, so I knew it was a popular movie. It was going to be packed. There were going to be a lot of kids there. And with theaters, many times parents will drop their children off and leave them and then come back after the movie is over. So we were sort of in between movies, so a lot of people had left. Some had come in and some had dropped their kids off. And at the time the tornado was approaching, we had about 60 children and some adults in one of the theaters where the Santa Claus 2 was going to be playing. And at that time, besides the sirens going off, which you could hear at that location, I was putting out statements and actually put one out that the tornado would be approaching the cinemas. And the theater manager at that point, along with several other adults that he gathered up there in the cinema, grabbed all the children, got them out of the cinemas, and they herded them into a restroom area, which was reinforced by cinder blocks. That's exactly where the tornado was heading. And when it did hit there, of the 5 cinemas, 2 of those were completely leveled. One of those was where Santa Claus 2 was going to be playing, where all those children had been, and it ended up there was cars laying in the theater seats. So that would have been a very serious situation had they still been in that cinema. The other 3 cinemas had major damage to them, but weren't completely leveled. And so after the event, all of those children, all of those adults were able to walk out of those restrooms, and none of them had a single injury. And as that tornado then moved off to the northeast of the city of Van Wert, we had reports that it was still doing damage. It leveled the industrial section of the north side of our town. Most of the factories there were completely destroyed, and actually most of them were wiped clean, and everything was carried off.
Keith Hossman works in emergency management in Henry County, Ohio, which is located northeast of Van Wert.
I'm listening to the operations going on in Van Wert, and so I've got all this information coming in. Fortunately for us in Henry County, about the only damage we had, really, we had a house partially blown off its foundation, ruptured a gas line down around the New Bavaria area, and we had there's a train line that goes east to west in the southern part of the county. Part of the train was derailed from the wind, but that was about the only thing as far as damage in Henry County. We did have debris from Van Wert falling in our county. In fact, I had somebody's Pell Grant information for their college tuition land in my yard. I was able to return that to them when I was in Van Wert. A friend of mine lives in the northeastern part of the county bordering on Lucas. He had insulation falling from the sky at his place. We were fortunate that we didn't have a whole lot of damage, but it's just evidence of just how strong that storm was to loft that debris and carry it that far.
Henry County, Ohio was indeed lucky. Back in Van Wert, rescuers were sifting through debris.
As Keith Hossman headed to Van Wert County to assist those in need, he described what he saw on the way there.
There was the Cooper Farms turkey processing plant. And like I said, I've been on disaster operations all over the country, and every time I think I've seen it all, something comes along and surprises me. As I'm driving past, I see that semi-trailer upside down on the roof of the Cooper Farms building. I'm just completely shocked that here's this big semi-trailer picked up and then set down, upside down on top of the roof of this building, like some big kid just picked it up and set it down. And I was just amazed at that. And again, this was a couple miles north of town, where the meat of the tornado actually went between there. And so that was a sign that I was heading into some pretty significant damage.
An F4 tornado with winds between 207 and 260 miles per hour had ripped through their community. 4 people were killed. Michael Lewis at the National Weather Service recalls a man's attempt to shield his wife as the tornado struck that day.
And it is hard for the Weather Service employees when they have to deal with this, because our mission is to save lives, and anytime there is a loss of property, injuries, or even fatalities, it is a real crushing blow. And the particular fatality that strikes me, and when I first moved here, to the area, and I met with Rick McCoy. We had a long talk. He took me on and kind of walked me through what happened. But the one fatality